So, I'd like to talk about the author Jason Pargins. And if you're watching this and you're asking yourself, who is that? Well, let's be real. Even though you're watching this video and, well, you don't know who he is, God bless you for it. Because you clicked on this video, you could have been anywhere else on YouTube, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. But if you know him, you probably know him by his pen name, David Wong. He's the author of the horror comedy books like John Dies at the End, This Book is Full of Spiders, and the now Zoe Ash series that begin with futuristic violence and fancy suits. Pargins' books seem like chaotic mashups of cosmic horror, dick jokes, and sarcastic narrators, because they absolutely are. But under the wild plots and self-deprecating humor, there's something deeper going on. An exploration of existential dread, the absurdity of reality, and the human urge to find meaning in any way. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm not really sure how long this video is going to be. If it's 15 or 30 minutes, my bad. You're from the future. Look, you have more information than I do, okay? But anyway, we're going to be talking about who Jason Pargins is, what makes his work so unique, and the big, unsettling, strangely comforting questions hiding beneath the meat monsters and interdimensional nightmares. And yeah, I'm going to be saying a lot of weird things like meat monsters and interdimensional nightmares. So grab your soy sauce. That's actually a thing. And if you know, then you know. Let's get started. Let's start with the man himself. Jason Pargins was born in Lawrenceville, Illinois, and started writing online back when the internet was one digital truck stop restroom. In the early 2000s, he began publishing surreal horror stories on a humor website called Pointless Waste of Time using the name David Wong, partly to keep his job separate from his weird-ass fiction. I'm saying weird-ass fiction because even though his fiction falls into the category of weird fiction, his fiction is weird-ass fiction. This is absolutely a compliment, though, in the way that I say it. These stories evolved into his debut novel, John Dies at the End. Initially self-published, the book spread through word of mouth, built a cult following, and was eventually picked up by the publisher Permuted Press. Permuted Press. Permuted Press. I have difficulty saying that for some reason. Anyway, let's continue. It even got adapted into a strange indie film directed by Don Coscarelli of Phantasm fame, starring Clancy Brown and Paul Giamatti. By the way, I absolutely love Clancy Brown and Paul Giamatti, but the movie was disappointing. So if you watch the movie, if you like the movie, you're going to like the book, but if you don't like the movie, don't let that determine whether you read the book or not. But let's continue. Pargins went on to become an executive editor at Crack.com, a site that would appreciate his blend of comedy with social commentary. And this is where I discovered him. It was 2022 with the publishing of his fourth book in the John Dies series, and his fifth overall book, If This Book Exists, You're in the Wrong Universe, where he stopped using his pen name and started using his actual name. So far, his body of work includes 4 in the John Dies at the End series, a series about 2 slackers who ingest a drug which allows them to see extra-dimensional creatures in their true form. 2 books in the Zoe Ash series. These include Futuristic Violence and Fancy Suits. That's 1 book, by the way. And Zoe Punches the Future in the Dick. These are the adventures of a young woman in her early 20s who inherited a criminal empire from her father she never met. And it takes place in the near future in a Las Vegas type dystopian city in Utah named Tabla Rasa. And then a standalone novel, I'm starting to worry about this Black Box of Doom, which was published in 2024. While on the surface they're totally different, supernatural horror versus near future satire, all his books wrestle with similar big questions about life, meaning, and cosmic indifference. One of the biggest existential threads running through Pargins' books is cosmic horror. The fear that the universe is unimaginably large, uncaring, and possibly hostile. In John Dies at the End, Dave and John discover a hidden world crawling with parasites, dimensional hopping creatures, and ancient beings so powerful they barely notice humanity at all. The soy sauce, their nickname for the mysterious drug at the center of the story. Yes, they call it soy sauce, but they actually have several other names for it, which are even more amusing, but whatever. It gives them a terrifying glance of this reality. This taps into the same dread that authors like H.P. Lovecraft explored, the idea that human life is insignificant in the grand scheme of things, minus the socially crippling bigotry. But here's the twist. Instead of surrendering to despair, Pargins' characters fight back, mostly by making jokes. And yes, many of these jokes are dick jokes. They're scared, yes. They're outmatched, yes. But they keep going, armed with sarcasm, pop culture references, and sheer stubbornness. They stare into the abyss and flip it off. Let's talk about the humor, because it isn't just there to make the horror bearable, it is the philosophy. In Pargins' world, humor becomes a survival mechanism, the one thing that keeps you sane when reality itself is absurd. Dave, the narrator, is constantly making fun of himself, the situation, even the monsters trying to eat him. And by laughing at the horror, he steals some of its power. It's very Camusian. Yes, I just invocated Albert Camus. It's that type of YouTube channel. It's the idea of revolt in the face of absurdity. The universe might not care about you, but you can still care about something. Even if that something is your best friend, your dog, or an extra-dimensional creature consisting of a hive of insect-like creatures which take the form of a beautiful woman. You know, anything that keeps you from going completely insane. Another existential theme Pargin keeps going back to is the illusion of control. Dave and John have front row seats to the cosmic horrors, but they're basically pawns in a game they barely understand. And in the Zoe Ash series, Zoe inherits money and influence overnight, but quickly learns she can't control the internet, the media, or the criminal world gunning for her. Something that Elon Musk still doesn't quite understand. Yet both Dave and Zoe keep making choices. They could walk away, do nothing, but instead they act, even when it seems pointless. Existentialist philosophers argue that freedom isn't about being all-powerful. It's about acknowledging your limits, then deciding what you'll do within them. Pargin's characters aren't heroes because they save the world. They're heroic because they try, even though they know they might fail. So why would these books resonate with you, even if you don't normally like horror or satire? Because the humor makes the philosophy human. Without the jokes, the stories might just be bleak meditations on cosmic insignificance. But with them, they become a weirdly life-affirming message. Yes, the universe is terrifying. Yes, none of this makes sense. But we can still laugh, we can still care, and that matters. Despite all the cynicism, Pargin's books do offer hope, not through prophecies or destined heroes, but through human connection. Dave and John have each other. Zoe, in a city full of enemies, slowly builds a trust with a group of unlikely allies. A really great scene in one of the Zoe books, this short scene, this isn't going to be a spoiler or anything, but where one of Zoe's fixers, kind of her right-hand man, the person who she probably sees as being the coldest and most stoic and least caring, she comes back to her mansion and he's got a scar on his hand, a bandage. And there's all types of ways he could have gotten this scar. And she doesn't ask. I don't think she asked, but she just assumes he may have been out beating somebody up or gotten to some type of conflict, something, right? And it turns out that earlier that day, when their mansion was in some sort of danger, her cat, Zoe's cat, got scared, and he ran to get her cat. And in the process of getting her cat and making sure her cat was safe, the cat scratched him up. He didn't really have to do this. She wouldn't have known anything, but he did that because he knows how much the cat means to her. Meaning isn't handed down by the universe. It's built moment by moment, choice by choice. That's what makes Pargins' existentialism oddly comforting. He's not saying life has meaning. He's saying it can if you make it. Sisyphus just keeps pushing that boulder up that hill because that's what you do. It's worth mentioning how Pargins' writing outside of his novels carries the same themes. At Crack.com, he wrote essays dissecting why people act irrationally, why society is absurd, and how media distorts reality, often ending with some version of, the world is nuts, but maybe that's not all bad. Whether he's writing about cosmic meat monsters, yep, cosmic meat monsters, or viral news stories, the message is similar. The world is messier than you think. You can't control everything. Laugh because it helps, and do good anyways. So why do Pargins' books stay with his readers? Because they don't lie. They don't promise the world makes sense or that good always wins. Instead, they give us something better: honesty, humor, and permission to keep going even when everything feels pointless. It's like the narrator saying, I don't have it figured out either, but here's what I got. Maybe it'll help at least a little bit. So if you've read any of his books, talk about it in the comments. And if you haven't, try John Dies at the End or Futuristic Violence in Fancy Suits. They're both pretty entertaining. And I would suggest read the book before you see the movie. Read the book, then see the movie. The movie's it's not great. Man, after you read the book, it's worth checking out. It's got its moments.